All right. So first question, I wanted to ask, like, how do you personally measure your success? Because I know, like, you talked about when Jay-Z first praised you when you were younger,
Mhm.
and then, like, also Spike Lee and Cornel West kind of referencing you
Mhm.
in their lectures. Do you feel like you get more, from that versus like the Grammy nominations or radio magazines? Is there a certain thing that like that makes you feel like you've been successful? Like, what would you call it?
I think it's more cumulative. It's like all that stuff combined,
Yeah.
as opposed to just one or a set of things. The the turnout from like academia has been like kind of crazy. The acceptance and you know going to schools and speaking and stuff like that.
Right.
It's kind of odd. Um, and then there's the regular fame, the magazine fame, the awards and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So it's like a mix of that stuff.
Right. Okay. So the other thing I wanted to ask you about is like, is on Superstar. I noticed you made kind of references to the death penalty, a little like reference
Mhm.
to the Indian genocide, and also daydreaming. We had that line about Abu Ghraib, and I just thought it was interesting because like both the songs aren't explicitly political, but you kind
Mhm.
of weave in those lines. I was
Mhm.
wondering if that's kind of like a conscious decision. Like, are you trying to, in terms of like how do you want to inject your message? You feel like it's more effective to do it like that versus like a blatantly political song?
I don't know. I think subtlety is best. That's very satirical,
Okay.
which in nature should be subtle. Um, and then like for instance for the line in Superstar about the electric chair and all that stuff. It was more to make the statement of how um, fame um, comes in many different forms, even to the man who's condemned to death.
Right.
People will come and it'll be the same turnout if it was a concert, and they'll have signs and they'll boo if he doesn't die and all type of other stuff. So it's just the spectacle of life, I guess.
Right.
Sometimes I'll be trying to put it in. A lot of times that's political or
Yeah.
social, what have you.
Okay. So in terms of the cool, I was just wondering, like, do you have any specific goals for the album, like in terms of carrying over, progressing from Food and Liquor, like production-wise, lyrically, taking it to a different place, like improving on something that you started with Food and Liquor?
Um, Basically, the cool picks up from uh, a song I did on the first album called The Cool.
Right.
And I basically expand on that character and that idea of like resurrection, to come back from something. Um, but the cool in particular is the hustler who gets killed and comes back to life and digs himself out of his own grave.
Right.
And so I kind of expand on his character. So like there's songs like He Say She Say, where He Say She Say becomes, on Food and Liquor it was just the statement about you know single parent homes and kids. But in The Cool, it becomes his backstory. That little boy grows up to
like that's
become
the
the
kid?
Cool.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's crazy.
Um, so it kind of has this interwoven cinematic kind of comic book kind of appeal to it in a lot of ways.
Right.
And it touches and goes in a lot of different areas, a lot of different genres of music. And there's actually three characters that I brought into the story. There's the Cool himself, and he gets expanded. And then there's another character called the Game, and another character called the Streets. And they're actual personifications of those two things: the game, the Mac game, the hustle game, the pimp game, and the streets. How people say they run in the streets and they fall in love with the streets.
Right.
They did it for the game, what have you. So they're like these monsters. They developed out into these real kind of creepy figures. Like the game has dice for eyes and bullets for teeth, and the streets has dollar signs for eyes, and it just gets real surreal. And it basically just tells that story. And then it goes a lot of places. It just talks about things that I think are cool to me. And one of the whole inspiration came from Cornel West, actually. When Cornel West, I went to go see him speak, and he made the statement that if you really want to affect social change in the world, you have to make those things that seem cool uncool. The cool, destructive things that we like to do. You have to make those things uncool. You have to make it hip to be square. And then you might see on some level small, tiny 180s, start occurring. But, we'll see. It's very, very, in that attempt, very overt, to name the album The Cool, and the main character is the zombie half riding with a rotten hand and the whole situation.
Right. And in terms of production, I know you're trying to do mostly in-house.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was cool because, like, a lot of people, you don't see that nowadays. Food and Liquor, I felt like you were able to pull it off with, like, getting different producers to fit the same vibe. But, like, you don't see albums too much where it's, like, people from their own camp. And I want to know, like, how effective do you feel like that is for your music?
It's real effective. Like, Soundtrack did on a music side and on a financial side as well. Soundtrack did like maybe 12, 13 joints on this album, and Soundtrack did Kick Push on the first album. He did Sunshine, he did Hurt Me Soul. When I Hurt Me Soul, he did He Say She Say. And so on this album, he kind of took hold of the entire project, you know. So it's a lot of his sound. He did Superstar, and Soundtrack is so diverse that he can do different forms of hip hop. You know, he can go down south, he can do pop, he can do whatever. So he kind of got the bulk of it, and everything else is like, I did a song with Uncle. I did a song with Patrick Stump from Fall Out Boy. He produced the record. And the rest of it is just like in-house. Well, not even in-house, just like my homies, like my friend LaMessi, who makes t-shirts, made me a beat, you know, and this guy over here from London who's kind of made a beat, you know. Right. That was about it, but everything's basically Soundtrack.
Okay. So when you're recording, I was wondering if there's any artists, like contemporary artists, that you kind of feed off of in terms of inspiration. Because I know, like, I read about how, you know, the Beatles used to feed off the Beach Boys. They go, like, back and forth, like, creative competition. And I feel like a lot of that's lacking in hip-hop, like, people having to look, like, Kanye was like, oh, I got to listen to Justin Timberlake to get inspired or whatever. You know, and I was wondering if there's any people, you know, doing music now that...
Yeah, not really in hip-hop, though. It used to be Jay-Z a lot, and it was not even for the album. It was more for just the inspiration to write. But it's not even that anymore. Now it's like movies, you know.
Yeah.
Like Uncle and Explosions in the Sky. And just different forms of music was Johnny Cash, you know, and it's more the aesthetic, you know.
Right.
Tom Waits was heavily influential on this album for some reason. Just in the abstractness of his storytelling and his ability to create the scene, you know. So I kind of took some of that and put it into some of the records.
Cool.
Yeah.